I'm going to start with these guys and tell you a little bit about how the whole thing started, because I think part of the term fiber artist is kind of a strange one, I think, applied to me, because I do video and I do photography and I do sculpture, so I never know like where exactly to fit in. But I think of all the things I get called, that's my favorite, and primarily because, you know, my hero was like my grandmother, who was just could make anything without reading a pattern. She just had to look at it long enough, turn it around once, and then she'd make it. So I started this. I got my master's in photography from Cal State Fullerton in 2002, and I was my master's show was all video. So I had 2 degrees in photography, did a whole show in video, so I wasn't making anything. And then I started teaching, and I had a student show me how to make a scarf, which my old roommate still has because it's so hideous, like so ugly, like not even wearable ugly. And it was rust velour. So not only did it be the ugliest yarn possible, we drop stitches, it's like, it starts like this, and it went like this. But I remember I thought, this is pretty incredible, because all my family lives in New York, so, because I'm from New York, and Niagara Falls, not the cool part. So I can make everybody scarves, because I'm totally poor, and my family needs scarves. So that's how the whole thing kind of started, and my grandmother, when I would go home and visit, would kind of, you know, reinforce that. But what started this, I would say, this whole pseudo-sod body of work, and that's kind of what I call them the forest fire friends and all the grass pseudo-sod, was I was going through a divorce, and I don't do well with, with divorce, or, you know, conflict, and I needed to stay busy, you know, in order to deal with the fact that here I'm like, you know, you don't know where you're going to live, you don't have to, you know, you're going to kill them. So I needed to start doing something. We're going to go chill. So I needed to start doing something, so I started, and I can remember this, as clear as day. I had the ugliest peach yarn. I think I collected ugly yarn. And then it had lime green fun fur. And I made a patch this thick, and I still have it, and I stuck a dowel on it, and I went over to my best friend's house, who was the director of an art center, and I said, what did I make here? I can't stop looking at it. And I've had it hung up, and I'm looking at it, and now all I want to make is grass. And she's like, well, maybe you're onto something. And then I started making grass, lots and lots and lots of grass. And this was part of the beginnings. And moving from Niagara Falls, if you've ever been there, is the honeymoon capital of the world, we have trees that grow naturally. Now, I'm in Chicago, so I don't say that sarcastically, because this is a great, great city, as opposed to LA, where it kind of sucks, because, which I shouldn't say, because it's on YouTube, if all my friends in LA, I'll be like, what? But what I don't, you know, when I moved from Niagara Falls, I got in my car, packed my car with everything I could, went, you know, I had a friend, drove across the country, was fortunate enough that I could go to Missouri, South Dakota, Montana, and actually see the country a little bit, and then down to the desert in Southern California. But when I moved to Southern California, I had no idea what to do. I remember my first night, the sprinklers went off, and I thought, oh my God, it's raining, and I ran outside, and there was no rain. And that's how the landscape is. It's harsh. I think it's, the desert, it is, if you've grown up around lush, beautiful grass that grows there naturally, and all of a sudden you're living in a house where the grass was brought on a truck, and all the trees are palm trees which were brought in on trucks, and there's all of these waterways which are empty. It's a real shock to the system, and that was one of the reasons I started making my own grass, because I thought, well, I will make my own lawn. I lived in an apartment, I didn't have a lawn, so I thought, well, I'll make my own lawn. The Forest Fire Friends started at this time because I was working at Chaffey College, which is in Rancho Cucamonga, which I have to tell you, I kind of took the job not thinking that was a real place. And, but it was, and I'm like, what? And I didn't realize how far it was from my house, and I took it. And I drove out there one day, and the side of the road was on fire. And I couldn't fathom that. I mean, I've been in blizzards, and we had earthquakes in Niagara Falls, like not a big deal. I've been in a tornado, whatever, but fire. The side of the road was on fire, all the trees. And I remember pulling over and calling my father, and I was just crying, and then he's like, well, I don't know what you do, just keep driving. She's like, I'll Google it. So you kind of imagine you just drive, you just keep going past it. So I got to campus, and this was during my divorce also. So there was this big kind of storm going on, literally mentally and environmentally. And I got to campus, and the campus was closed because we could see the fire on the hill. And I had to wear masks, you know, when I would go teach because of the ash in my car. It was just great. And that for me was so jarring, so startling, that it kind of reinforced the idea that I needed to make grass. But it also brought in these issues of land and land use. Okay? So there's so many things going on right now with this. So I hope you kind of don't mind my non-linearity. I can't say that the PowerPoint's going to, like when I get my notes, I can't say it's going to make it any better. So at this time, I started to make this, and I became very interested in the idea of having like one end like it would be new, fresh grass, and then transitioning into grass that was dying, and then transitioning then again into grass that had died or had burned, and that was in various stages of regrowth. And this was my first residency I ever had at Huntington Beach, and it was just like Karen was saying, it's wonderful when you get to work with a curator that says, hey, why don't you do this? And I'd never shown this piece. We did a performance where people come in and make flowers and grow the flowers on there. Let's see, and these are some close-ups. So this was entirely handmade.
That is so cool.
I've never seen this. If you looked at it up close, you would realize that like I do not know how to knit. Like just drop stitches galore. It was a mess, but it was at the time I had a family member died, and this idea of burying them came into play, and I couldn't afford to bury them, which you hope to never have happen. But the land is so expensive, and the way that land is used in Southern California is so. To me, confusing. It is very confusing. Like I can't explain how there can be houses on a hilltop that, and the communities won't allow safe burns, but then there'll be a forest fire which will kill everybody in the neighborhood, but it wouldn't have if there were safe burns, and we'll get to that.
And burn is a required cycle. It's part of the natural cycle in Southern California. It depends on regular burn, so it's crazy.
There are some plants that
Farmers associations, though, they don't like to smoke.
That's what they're like, oh, this is not good for me.
Well, and back where we're from, it doesn't burn, so why should it burn here?
Yeah,
It just does.
Yeah, no, I met with a fire scientist a couple months ago because I wanted to know, when I was making these animals, I wanted to know where do the deer go when things start on fire, where do the rabbits go, where do the fox go, and he told me that most of the casualties are surprisingly snakes and rats, because they can't, snakes will be in the ground and they'll get, and rats also will get suffocated. The deer usually can sense, and what they'll do is go to the end, and that was one of the reasons I liked these very short.
They went laterally across the front.
Yes, that was incredible. That they knew where to wait, and that was another reason for the piece being where you could see the separate areas of growth. So I thought, how incredible that the animal would know where to go.
Well, the ones who didn't know didn't reproduce.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Darwin's law.
Yes, and so I could, in my head, I could picture all these deer lined up. Sorry.
Do you guys need less light on the screen? Is it okay? Yes.
Okay, the notes are coming, so this is good here. I really can say.
Yay, okay, let's pass the popcorn. We're lectures.
So this was also my first opportunity to work with the public in this way, and I was given a project room and asked people to knit little pieces of grass, which is basically, and it's basically just pieces of brown yarn with this fun fur, and I installed all of these patterns and everything that I had when my great aunt moved into assisted care. We found out two things. One is that when she was younger, she'd been an avid knitter. So she said to me, I got all of her books, and you can see some of the really old patterns were things that she had made. And two, she was a dental model, which is fabulous because I also collect teeth, so it was a complete twofer. I didn't get her teeth, but I got all these pictures of her holding like a toothbrush, smiling. And I thought, oh man, so that's really good teeth in the family. So this was a very exciting that I got to work with Girl Scouts and curators and fellow artists. And they're, when I think about free range knitting, I just stop on this bunny for a second, because this is completely where I know free range knitting from. I bought a book called Stitch and Bitch, and which is great, right? It's a great book, and it had bunnies, it had a bunny in it, and I'm like, I want to make a bunny, and it had a pattern, so I thought, oh, I'll go home and I'll ask my grandma. I go home and I walk in the door and grandma, we're gonna make a bunny, and I show her the pattern, and she's like, I can't read that. What? She goes, I don't read the pattern. I'm like, all right, just go home. So she's like, go home, make me 2 arms and 2 legs, a body, a head, flappy ears. I'm like, really, that's all you're gonna do? So I went home, and I lived 2 houses down. I just remember walking home, I'm like, what the hell? And I came back, and she was like, great, we have money. And that was how we did it. And so this is the back of her head, and if you can't really see her, she's hooked up to an oxygen machine at this point, but she's still making Afghans for the sick. And you know, she had this wonderful bouffant hair, I mean, up until like the very, very end, where I'm pretty sure like she had needles and everything like stuffed in there, and they probably found a wealth of that later. So I was working with fun parts. I was just going to tell that. And then just the different colors, and like I said, the whites and what I thought would look like it had burned, and then combinations of 2. And finally, this started. And this started because I had a meeting with the curator, and I said, what would be like the weirdest thing that I could cover? And I got a lot of slack from there are my notes. They're so good.
Do you know that that's winter? That picture is
oh yeah, no, this is in winter. And which fun. I have no idea how hard I struggle. I really struggle. So where is everybody? And now let's start. Okay, so we thought, I was getting a lot of people teasing me because I had an echo, and if you've never seen an echo, they're shaped like bubbles. They're just shaped like these like roller skates. So everybody would kind of joke about it, how it looked like a shrub, and I'm like, oh, you want to see a shrub? So I thought, I'm going to hand knit a car cover for it. And that was one of the things I got to do at Huntington Beach Art Center, was work with the public, and everybody made a little piece. So this was made of hundreds of little pieces. Again, I had no, and you can see at this point, it's just laying on the car. I had no idea how I was going to do this. I ended up buying a car cover and stitching it all to a car cover, but then it weighed about 50, 60 pounds, and it was unmovable by just me. But I would store it in the trunk and then take it places and photograph it. So I took it. Yeah, the most beautiful. We drove it up there. I took it to my godson's school, and the children. What was amazing to me is that you all should make car covers, by the way. What was amazing was these kids have known me since like he started first grade, because I'm the godmother and I'm always there. So there's Alex. So he was, you know, they were very comfortable with me, but all of a sudden, I think that they had not experienced art you touch. And so here I am, I'm like, touch it. Every one of those kids did what this kid did. They put their face on it, and they just experienced it. And for them, they might not have a lawn. You know, in Southern California, you're not guaranteed a lawn. Yeah, you can probably have got some concrete. I mean, if you're responsible, you might have like a drought kind of garden, which I think are great, but usually they're succulents or cactus, and you don't want to cuddle. Then I took it to a car show, and I photographed the love of my life on the top. But what I loved about this was that it just became, well, first of all, if you try and pull into a car club show, where it's all like 40s and 50s cars with like, it's the pinup girl style, guys and gals, they think you're in the wrong place. And they're like, you can't park that here. I'm like, wait, hold up. I know it's a 2000 Echo, and I know that it doesn't have the look of your, give me a minute. So I think actually, this was the car show. A little girl couldn't understand what was underneath it, and then every one of the guys ended up posing with it because they thought it was so cool when they were done.
She's got spaghetti in twice all over that cover.
They were like, what is going on? And I thought this was great because this one little girl, she kept coming over and she just, like she knew it was a car, but it just was kind of unfathomable to her. And then I took it to Silverado Canyon, where they had very bad fires a couple of years ago. And this is when I spoke to the fire scientist. And he told me what the animals would do and what happens to the land. And I got to look at aerial photographs of the Big Lagoon of Fire, which I think was in the 90s, maybe earlier in the late 80s, 87, I think.
It was in the late 80s.
Yep. And it took a whole lot out. And you could see the photographs are amazing. You could see in the aerial one house that had clear cut around it survived, and everything else was annihilated. And again, the fire scientist said what he, as a fire scientist, and the fire department fight is ignorance. And they fight people who don't want this burn. And like Karen was saying, a lot of plants won't even reproduce or grow if they don't burn. It's part of the circle of life. Like, it has to happen. So that was pretty exciting to meet with him and kind of give it a bit of information. So then I was invited to be an artist in residence at Grand Central Art Center. And at this point, I had a moose and a deer. And they were like, yeah, you should make a whole room. And I'm like, all right, I'll make a whole room. So it's 23 feet by 23 feet.
Oh my God.
And the wallpaper was photographs I had taken when we went to the cherry blossoms. I went to Monterey and photographed a bit of forest, 360, made big 8-foot photographs. And we built, I have to tell you kind of a funny story about how this was built. This was built right after I donated the kidney. So I don't know if any of you guys donated a kidney, but they put you on some stuff. And you were very calm. See, I don't remember anything. So when Karen called me and said, how do you install this? I said, I don't know, because they installed it when I was on medication, and I don't remember.
So I said, send me the medication.
It totally works. God bless you. The curators I work with, Andrea and Dennis, we knew we wanted a ramp, the animals to be on a ramp that people could crawl up on and sit and lay down. And there's an audio component where you hear birds, and then a fire starts and you hear it raging, and then it comes down again. And there was a video component, so I told them to build it twice incorrectly. And finally, Andrea comes in and she's like, do not listen to the most heavily medicated woman here. But I couldn't stand, I'm like, oh. So she's like, I was back in bed, and then I came down a week later and it was done. And it was good that I had no input. So that's why, for those of you guys that installed it here, thank you, because I love it.
It worked great because you were here.
No, if I would have been here, it would have been terrible. I'm not a good installer at all. I have another installation fabulous horror story for you when we get to the end.
Well, if you have questions, check with Susan, and she will tell you how to install your home.
I'm not a good installer. I'm very good at getting the work there and having friends help me, because I don't understand space. So for me, the concept of putting this together was very hard to understand, because I could only understand it in regards to the flat areas. So I made a forest, and again, I'm dealing with the issues where some of the deer are totally blackened, and some of them are in regrowth. And there was a soft breeze, the fire crackling, and this was some hand-knitted, but then at one point we had to get a machine. But the machine was manual. So anyone who thinks that using a machine is cheating, I have to tell you, every single piece of knitted material in the show, I did it. And I did it in 5 months, teaching full-time and a half, and donating an organ. So
You did a knitting machine?
I had to get a knitting machine because we had to do so much. So we got a knitting.
And there's acres of stuff in
Oh, it's you can ask them when I shipped it. I just put it all in a big box.
Weighs exactly 1 ton.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much it weighs. So this was based on, I was very concerned about, you know, the ecology and the environment, but also I was getting more and more, I think, frustrated and annoyed is not the right word, with land use and the way land prices, you know, I was thinking, well, I'm in my early 30s, I should probably think about getting a house, and then I got a house tattoo instead, which was $50 as opposed to $500,000, which seems to be, right, exactly, it seems to be about like the number of decimals that you want to kind of take off of it, because you can get, if you wanted to get a house, and being from and living in Buffalo, I at one point lived with a guy who bought a house for $34,000, and it was 4 stories. It was the neighborhood was a little sketchy, but I was sketchy at the time.
And there's no jobs.
Yeah, exactly. But in California, like that's not even an option in Southern California.
Like you that much for a tear down.
Yes, yeah, you can. I mean, even now with foreclosures and everything, like there's no home ownership seems to be something that my husband and I'm married. My husband and I consider fiction. I have absolute fiction, and I don't see it happening. And it's because of the way, you know, California deals with its land. But then again, maybe that's good. And Karen and I were talking a little bit about homesickness, and maybe I'm not exactly, you know, where I used to be in. So when I was invited to be the artist in residence, and I created this forest, one of the things about the forest, the fires is also the Santa Ana winds, which if any of you guys have been to Southern California, are a very, very hot wind that is drier than anything you can imagine. And Raymond Chandler often refers to them. You do. You absolutely. And I'll show you I have blood work coming up that's from the Santa Anas that I was doing at the same time. So I was making this work, but then when it would get dry, I started doing blood work because I was also interested in forensics, and my nose would bleed constantly, so I just started scanning it. I would just have a scanner, you know, and then, so, well, one of the things I want to say about the video, very quickly, and I'm sorry if I'm getting a little off track, was that it was very important to me that you laid down and you just really enjoyed it. And the video was the sky, and it was almost an hour loop, but I built in 7 glitches, so you could watch it for 5 to 6 minutes, and then it would, in After Effects, I built mistakes. So, right? So when you watch it, it was very important to me that you got lulled in. And then you thought, oh, this is so warm and fuzzy. But then maybe a little bit of the reality came back to you that it's fake. That you're in this gallery. If you want to experience this kind of thing, you are in a gallery in Santa Ana. So it was very much about, you know, bringing the outside inside and idealizing it to the point where hopefully, after laying there for a while, and also with the audio, if you listen to the whole audio piece, at one point you can hear the trees breaking and cracking and smashing, and it's very anxiety provoking, and then it goes right back into birds, and it dies down, and you're like, oh. So there's this moment where you're completely seduced by it, and then, I mean, because they're adorable, come on. You know, they're really, really cute.
I'd be really scared when I'm not like that.
No, I would too, because they're just those Christmas deer, which is also a secret.
Is that what's inside there?
Christmas deer.
Those little Walmart things?
Yep, and the bunnies are actually topiary, but all the deer are those Christmas deer, which I would go out on the day after Christmas and buy like it was also installed in the show. I was with Karen. And this was a different incarnation of it, and I worked with the curator, Andrea, and we had them all facing out on this island, like almost in a way where we had encroached on their land to the point where they had this little bit of grass left, and they were protecting it, right? And they were all kind of facing us, implicating us and saying, well, what do you want us to do? Like, this is all you left us, right? You built and built and built and built and built until we're over in this corner. That's why whenever I hear people who, you know, live at like mudslides in California, it's very hard for me to understand why people would build in areas where it's prone to mudslides or it's prone to these kind of natural disasters.
I filmed it in the riverbed of the San Diego River. We filmed in the riverbed. And then they were surprised when it floods. Like, how do you not see it? This is a river. You know, it's on either side.
That's absolutely, and I try not to, I want to remain my compassion, I am wandering compassionate, but even even I'm like, wait, that's some new math when you build, you build on a with no trees, and you wonder why when the rains come, things happen. So we had the photographs of the littler photographs surrounding it, and I think this is one of my favorite installations. Yeah, but they had it was a gallery in West LA, and they had this little display window. The curator was like, I don't know what we're going to do with that display window.
Using the Jurassic technology.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going for. I wanted it to be reminiscent of, and then you guys read William Gibson's Neuromancer? That my thesis was partly on technological extension of the body. And in Neuromancer, the detective, Case, is walking with this other gentleman, and they walk by a window, and there's a horse in the window, but it's really worn, right? It's got some just like patches of hair, and the one gentleman's like, oh my God, what is that? And Case is like, it's a horse. And the other gentleman's like, I've never seen one. And he's like, yeah, this is one of the last one. So it just made me think that if one day, like that we may visit these kind of dioramas in natural history museums, and I think this is one of my, like I said, one of my favorite ways. You could, and also it played with this idea of something so tactile, like, but you couldn't touch it. Yeah. And then I was invited to be in an auction. And I thought, I'm going to make something kind of sassy for the auction. No, I began making sod, and like rolling it, so I'm making little pallets and calling it pseudo sod so that you could buy your own one. The people, and it was for Laguna Beach auction, and it did not sell. Not funny for those people. Too soon? It didn't work out so well. But I remember, what made me do this was my friend Leonard, who was my forensics cop friend, and we always go to dinner and talk about, like, who got what, where, when, what it looked like. And I've been going to his house, and he had no lawns, it was just dirt. And one day I went, and there was a full lawn in squares. And I don't think I'd ever seen sod before. Like, how do you get to your early 30s and not see sod? But I remember standing there and photographing with my phone. I'm like, God. And he's just all like proud of it because it's
put it down myself in 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. It was also like it was a full ground. It's also prestigious in a way. It's because it's a desert. Having something there that's a foreign body, and he was very, very proud of it, and I thought that was kind of amazing. So what I'll do is I'll make graphs for people. Then I had an idea, I need to take these guys out. So I owned a very small car, which none of them fit into. So I loaded them up in my friend's minivan, and we took them to Hollywood, way over the corners of Hollywood sign. Yeah, right over the furthest corner.
You can see just the H. Is that
just the H, yeah. This was, I was in a show at the Barnsdale. It was an actions, conversations, and intersections. This is another installation. I walk in the room, there's like 100 artists in the show because it's 3 different parts, actions, conversations, and intersections. And I had 4 days in the main gallery. So they sent me a map, and I'm like, this is how big it is, but I don't understand maps. So I'm like, oh, I can totally deal with it. I walk in, and the space is about this big. And I go to the bathroom, and I'm like, so my husband's like, are you okay in there? I'm like, I just thought, like, there's no way. This is the biggest space I've ever seen. So one of my big ideas was I would take the animals up there, photograph them in the landscape around the Barnsdale, and then I would show those photographs along with parts of the real estate show because the space was so large. So this is windy. This is one of my favorites. Looking out over LA. And there's this fence in the background, like it's not, this land is not her land. And she has to stay inside. It's almost like a zoo. But then we ended up installing it. It worked out fine. Luckily, I worked with a wonderful curator and artist in Edith Abeda, who can walk into any room and hang something perfectly. I think it's a gift. So I was there for 2 days with the show and held knitting workshops and even more than that, I sat and watched kids, and kids were all over these. And they're sleeping on it, like their parents are walking around looking at art, and like the kids are sleeping on it. And it was just pretty wonderful to watch their interaction with it, because again, at home in Niagara Falls, in Buffalo, deer come up to your back door. You know, where my parents live now in Oregon, my mom sees a horse. Actually, like she's seen deer, horse, squirrel. I haven't seen a squirrel in Southern California ever.
We have an ordinance against squirrels.
Yeah, there's like nothing there. So this idea of wildlife that they go up and then interface with was exciting. So at the same time, I started working on a series of blood and dealing with the body and identifiers such as blood, hair, and skin. And these are literally just collections of my nosebleeds. So there's not a ton of them, but there's maybe 25 of them over like 5-6 years.
How big is that slug?
This is it's just a scanner. This was actually, I have to confess, not a nosebleed. It was a spatula. And I cut my hand really bad on the spatula, like really bad. But wait. My husband's like, it literally looks at me, he's like, I'll get the scanner. So like, he gets the scanner and I bleed on it, and then, I mean, it's everywhere. And then it's like, we scan it, I'm just holding it above my head. He's like, we're scanning it. And they want to calculate it, because I thought it electric colors. But then when it was done, yeah. Luckily, I married a video game designer, so anyone who could do that kind of crazy stuff, this is nothing. I do go through scanners like a lot, though.
Shorting out your scanner.
Because they're biohazards. At some point, you can't get the blood off. Also, because I like to kind of look at the way the blood changes color, and this is also part of I want to go back to school and be a forensics officer. Also, I've had, since I've had 8 surgeries, I'm very interested in the inside of the body and the outside of the body. And I use these as kind of as a document to all of my injuries. So I've also scanned all my scars. I have photographs of my kidney surgery that the nurse took. And then Kevin, my husband, and Andrea, put online. And then everybody went to the blog, we had a blog, and they put them online, so there's pictures of me, like the Sarlacc pit, and with no warning. So like we start getting calls like, for God's sake, like put a warning up there. It's like, what to check? And then there's like people, I guess, they're kind of gross. I know, right? And this was another one of the latest blood scans. Well, then I thought I need to make something fiber, because I've been working on these 2 kind of medical and forest fiber pseudosod projects, and I thought, why don't I make an Afghan? And I was really interested in how something that my grandmother had made that were usually thought of as keeping you warm, and they're very soft. I was interested in how I could reformat that idea, and what I did immediately following my divorce is I ended up making one that was my size, with just black and white with rays, but red here, because I've been having these nightmares where I was stabbed. So I made one that was like a depiction of this. And then I made one the color of hospital food, because one of my relatives got sick. And it was, I have to say, it's probably the ugliest thing I've ever made, because hospital food's so gross. So I traded that away. But this piece ended up turning out pretty well, and it was 500 different squares.
Oh my God.
Most of which are 2 to 3 colors, and they're very small. But I have to tell you that this is one of the things that I absolutely believe as an artist is that I don't come up with an idea and go, I'm going to do this idea. I just kind of come up with like a little flicker, and right? And I'm like, I should try this. This is what happened. My godson comes over. Did I think of this? No, I did not think of this. My godson comes over. He's 9 at the time. And I have it done on the floor, but it hasn't been, it was still rolling because I needed to flatten it and iron it. And he lays on it and lays on the ground and says, I'm going to roll over it and I'll flatten it for you, right? And then he stops and he knows me. He said, look, it's like I've been shot. Right? So part of me is terrified because I'm like, Jesus, but part of me is like, oh, I'm so proud of you. You know me so well. Yeah, he has it many times when I've gone over there and he's given me little pieces of paper with where he has gotten a cut and he has stamped it and given me the blood, all of his teeth.
Alexander is so from an art family.
You know, he's raised by artists and curators and writers, so for him, this was never gross. It was, you know.
No little boy of 9 would find that gross. That would be like glory.
Yeah. I'm so glad I thought of it. I wouldn't have rolled around on it and thought of it. So this is my friend, this is not him, but this is one of my models. And at the same time, I was teaching, like a crazy person. And I was teaching a lot of the Adobe suite, and I began a new series called How to Illustrate a Surgery, using some of the photographs from the surgery that I had taken. Don't let you take, when you're going in, don't let you take anything more. You should always, even to the dentist, you should always take a camera. Even the little stuff you can get. You should always ask for a gift bag when you leave.
That's right.
Because last time I got a root canal, I left with a bag full of antique tooth stuff. It was pretty fabulous. I'm in the car, I'm like, I think that I deserve something after a root canal. It's $2,000, and he's all up in my, and I walked out of there with some doing the same thing. So I do ask for gift bags now, not just for the Oscars. So this was, I started to work with some of the, if you've ever worked with Illustrator, you know that anytime you make a bounding box, there's a center. And if you've ever gone to the doctor, you know a lot of times when you're laying down, they put these like kittens or something like above you to try and distract you. So I added the word center. And then also if you're using Illustrator, you know, if you're making a Bezier curve, that you have a handle on it. And one of the things that after the surgery, my body changed. I was no longer smooth on one side. I had a divot. So that was like, I called that my Bezier curve. And these two pieces led to...
Is that your kidney stone?
Mm-hmm. I know, it's really unimpressive.
Amazing.
The doctor was so funny because I went in, and Andrea drew drawn a face on it. So he pulls up the shirt and to look at it, and then he sees the face, and he laughs, and he photographs it with his iPhone, and then puts it back, and he said, keep in mind this is Orange County. I don't know if you guys have seen the Housewives of Orange County.
It's the most conservative county in America.
It's ridiculous. So people don't want scars.
No.
I enjoy them. I've got a ton. I love them. So he said to me, he goes, you could probably get some plastic surgery or put some vitamin E over that. And I looked at him and I'm like, I asked you, I wanted a shark. I wanted one that looked like I had been eaten by a shark. And this is what you gave me? And I was mad. It's so small. It's nothing. I was disappointed.
It doesn't look like you suffered much, does it?
No. I didn't suffer. I don't remember anything.
I think you could get a tattoo of a shark bite.
I'm waiting for, when I get the feeling fully back, I'm going to get a tattoo. Because right now, it would be too painful with the feeling kind of coming and going, because they cut to the major nerves that crisscross here. So I thought, I'm going to wait till I can either suffer completely or not feel it at all. And I've already passed the not feel it at all stage. And these also led to a series that I began last year at residency in Montalvo Art Center, where I'm using the language of infographics, like the ones you see in the New York Times on the weekends, with circles and graphs and things like that, to illustrate all of my surgeries using this visual language and trying to. Because my surgeries are ridiculous. Like, I broke my nose walking the door, like things like that. Like nobody, like people do that, but they're not proud of it. Me, I'm all out there with it. So I thought it would be interesting to incorporate all of the visuals into making this new thing that I'm working on in my, got a lot of arrows. And then I make donuts also, crochet donuts. I just throw this in there just in case you weren't getting through the blood, if you were like, oh God, no more blood. Let me tell you something, if you ever crochet donuts, you don't show them to anybody because people will love them, and then you spend 6 months crocheting donuts for every single person you know. It's like telling people you're a photographer and they're getting married. Oh my God, would you do it? Why didn't you make me donuts? No. I can't. I got a bad hand. And then this time, about let's see. Well, this is interesting. So I've always been working on like the suicide and also the medical. So I've been collecting medical tools because medical tools expire and they throw them away. So I've been collecting expired or antique medical equipment, and I have got kind of a ridiculous serial killer almost amount of this stuff. I mean, you know, but I mean, crazy. I do. So, I like. Oh, Karen, it's so very sad. But what I loved about the tools was I've had metal plates in my body, and then they were taken out. It was taken out, and I had it molded and riveted to my ear back when I was modeling for a piercing salon in the mid-90s. But I had my nurse friend come over, and I said, "What do I have?" And we went through it, and we wrote what everything belonged to, so I could start to think of these tools. And the skin is one of my favorites. It's very hard to knit a cozy for. But when I started to think, I want to collect every instrument that's on my body. So I'm doing pretty good. I don't have some of the big stuff, but I do a lot of the little stuff like the bone screws and the retractors, and I don't think the skin hook is mine.
Oh gosh.
But I started to crochet them cozies, and the started body of work called I Will Always Take Care of You. And it made me think that these things are inside of me, and they're cleaned, and then a couple years later they just started. And it's still like objects. They're beautiful. I mean, I love making photographs, and I photographed them on a light box at the police department. And they're just, to me, just without the cozies, they're beautiful. I had taken x-rays of them with the cozies on, but right now I'm having a density issue where you really can't see the cozy, you can just see the tool, but I'm thinking about how to work with x-rays with these also. And I started to make little things to take care of them.
Sort of suture material to knit.
Funnily enough, my nurse friend just brought me some over.
We're going to go to the museum of surgery.
Oh, please.
Okay.
I would love that. It's funny though, before the kidney surgery, Andrea, whose husband got my kidney, watched the surgery on YouTube like 17 times. I can't watch any of that. I'm such a wuss. I'm more of a psychological kind of thing. Like I could think about it, but I could never watch it being done. So it's like the surgery channel. No, thank you.
There's a surgery channel? I guess I would want to watch that.
I kind of wish I guess I'm more into the acute, the scars and the things that are left behind than the actual process, which is, I'm pretty process based, but that process is okay for me to skip over. So I'm working on these right now.
Those are weird.
I kind of think of them almost as like archaeological in a way, because they each have a narrative, and I don't know what their narrative is. But working with nurses, and while I was in Montalvo, I also had several studio visits with one of the other artists' wives, who was a nurse, so she came to my studio several times to help me with both the infographic project and this one, and really explain to me when would it be used. And I do several books on surgery where I have to kind of suck it up and look at it to see how it's being used. And then the idea of it being discarded. And usually what happens is they're shipped to third world countries and reused. So that brought up a whole other aspect to this exploration date of metal objects and why then it's okay to ship them off to be used someplace else. Okay, so then I went to Montalvo, and Montalvo was just an opportunity and a half. It's right up near San Jose. And if you're like me, and you're big on nature, but your idea of camping is in like a hotel. I'm just not a nature person. This was remarkably nature, which is kind of a contradiction. I like nature, but I don't want to be bitten by nature, I think, is the thing. And I like nature when it has a restroom. you know, it's me. So I went up to Montalvo Art Center, and I get there, and I'm like, oh my God, this is a wilderness. And so there were like 10 little studios up this hill, and I'm at the very top of the hill. And I get there at night, we walk up, there's coyotes and a black widow this big on my door. And I look at, again, my friend Andrew came with me, I just look at her and I'm like, I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm going home. I'm like, I just can't, there's no way I can go in there. So the next day I went out and bought like all sorts of bug filler. But it was a really interesting experience because the landscape was completely in where it was all around me. I had to deal with it in the way that I had been kind of imposing my will upon it by making it, creating it. And now it was imposing its will on me. And that I thought was a very interesting kind of push and pull. So I took my animals out there and started to photograph them in the landscape. Can I make it darker for one of the photographs? Because I had something kind of magical happen and I just want to. So this is, I wanted to make glamour shots of all of them. Because frankly, I'm tired of carrying these deer around. If these deer went to a, I don't know if it's a story, someplace will stay. So I wanted to photograph my fake landscape with my fake deer in the real landscape. And I also, this reminded me of Olin Mills, our Sears portrait studio.
Oh, it does look like Olin.
Yeah, you know what, have you guys ever had to do that? Because I think that's kind of an outdated thing. But if you've ever had to go to Sears and do the whole like, yeah. And that's what I wanted my animals to experience. Here's white buck. And I've got a fox.
Well, that's the answer is no.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't know how to work anything on it.
I don't even know. Oh my gosh.
You did not do that.
I can kind of have to.
I love it.
She must have been horrified. You know, first of all, I'm borrowing my friend's truck while I'm up there, and it's a minivan. I mean, it looks like I'm there to pick up all the soccer games.
Where is that?
This is right in front of the Senator's on Montalvo.
Are you kidding? I'm so blind to
Like, oh my God. And this is not a road. So I drove up there real quick to take a picture. Who walks by? The owner, like the woman in charge, always. So I took a quick photograph, quickly backed into something, kind of messed up the bumper and took off, but which I don't know if you ever had a fake deer tied in front of your car. Your getaway is not as big as exactly. Well, this is a llama. This was a big kind of llama, soccer mom van. So it's like a Windstar or something. But I wanted to play with that. Family is also very domestic issues, and all my work's very, very personal. So I wanted to play with that idea that you didn't have to have like a big steadily, hunting vehicle. You could just go kill whatever you wanted, just in your minivan, like on the way to get the kids. And then this happened. And I think I can probably count on one hand my favorite photographs in the world that I've done. And that's great. I'm 37, so I think I've got 5. Right? Yeah, I probably have 5. And this is one of them. I went out, I did all the animals. And I put the little critters on the lawn because they kept telling me that every night the deer would come out. Well, I don't know anything about deer, except they're really skittish, and they don't come out until dawn, until dusk. So if you wait for them for like at 6 p.m. in July, you're going to be waiting for quite a while. So, thank you. So I just waited. I waited, and I just sat there and let them stand on the lawn, and then as dusk came, finally, they started to come, and they were just totally confused and almost angry at my deer, and they wouldn't come closer. But they just were like, I'm not having anything of it. And I mean, what you don't see was human. There was bucks, like these gigantic deer jumping over this thing, and it was getting late, and if you know anything about photography, like once you get down to like almost no light, you've got to buff up your eyes. So you really run the risk of like underexposing it and losing parts of it. So I can honestly feel my breath kind of catching as she started to walk over to me. And she walked right in frame and looked right at my ear. And it was just one of the, you know, most surreal, most clear, I think that's the right word, and also like I felt so blessed that the universe was generous enough to give me her for 2 seconds. And she stopped because all the other exposures, she was completely blurry. Because, you know, Jesus, Lord, she stopped and really studied him and then ran away. And that was it. And if you've ever, you know, as a photographer, you shoot a couple hundred and you get the one. And I'm home that night, I couldn't even look at them because I knew I got it. I knew that she had given me that gift. And then I thought, well, I should make a forest. And this was another thing that I was able to experiment with at Montalvo. While I was up there for a month, I got sick for a couple of days and I couldn't go in and work with the deer, so I just kind of sat on the bed and watched Law and Order. Every year. Yes, I do. I can watch Law and Order for days. It's yeah, it's every night I go to bed with like Law and Order or 30 Rock. And also, you don't need to watch it so it's perfect knitting TV, because it's the same episode, like just for 14 episodes. It's the same thing. It's always the father who tries to put a chip in the wife. So while I was sick, I got a gag gift right before I left, and the gag was how to crochet legs. And I thought, this is ridiculous. So I packed it, because I got it right before I left, so I packed it. And then when I opened it, I realized that all of these patterns could be adapted to make forest life, and moss, and leaves, and things like that. So I began to make my own forest, and have it. I really wanted it to kind of crawl up and start to consume. And another thing happened that was seemingly quite normal, but not for me. I got a puppy, and puppies like to walk, and they like to walk slow. So I became absolutely aware of every ivy, every leaf, every bit of moss, everything in my neighborhood. So I started to document it on our walks. So now when Walter and I go out for a walk, I'm like, come on, we gotta go do research. And we go out, and you know, and he helps me do my research. And his act of looking became my act of looking, and it was slow. And I started to work slower, which if you've listened to me for the last hour, you realize I'm not very slow. I'm just like, so this is not only a way of changing the way I was working, but also a change in my perception of things. I think that's actually the last slide. One of the things that's come out of this is being in the show. A fellow artist up in this part of LA, part of this arts collective, called me afterwards and said, you know, I've been wondering if it was possible to make a forest. And then I saw your piece. So now I'm co-curating a project called Forest for the Trees, where we have a big space and we're making a forest, much in the vein of the hyperbolic crocheted wreath. So I have information on it, and I would love if you knit, crochet, do paper mache, anything crafty, and you can send it, and it will become part of our forest, because I think it's important to give people that space where they can come in and lay down and just be with quiet, you know, and feel warm and safe in the heart of LA. Okay, Jeremy, thank you.